Dr. Subramaniam Swami.
Mr. Deputy Chairman, I think the principal opposition party, the Congress party, seems to be confused between this amendment bill and the NRC. And most of them have argued against the NRC, and those few who have argued against this amendment bill have in fact misled the House in some ways. Mr. Sibbal was here and he said that the Citizenship Act has no reference whatsoever to religious persecution. But he ought to know that in the Constitution, there is Article 11 which says, Parliament to regulate the right of citizenship by law. Nothing in the foregoing provisions of this part shall derogate from the power of Parliament to make any provisions with respect to the acquisition and termination of citizenship and all other matters relating to citizenship. The bill, in fact, on Clause 2 says, in the Citizenship Act 1955, Section 2, the following provision shall be inserted, provided that any person belonging to Hindu, Sikh, Buddhist, Jain, Parsi, or Christian community from Afghanistan, Bangladesh, or Pakistan who entered in India on or before 31st December 2014 and was being exempted by the central government by or under Clause C, etc., or from the application of the provisions of the Foreigners Act 1946, any rule or order made therein shall not be treated as illegal migrant for the purposes of the Act. So the whole amendment that has been brought is to bring this consideration that a fairly large number of people are running away from Pakistan, and they are the Hindus, the Sikhs, the Buddhists, and the Christians and the Parsis. Not only Hindus and associated the Indic religions of Buddhist, Sikh, but also those who are not of the Hindu faith, namely Christian and Parsis. Zoroastrian, this would be the correct word. Now, that has been brought in as an amendment. And the reason why is that if you look at the percentage of population of Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, Christians, and Parsis in the 1952 figures of Pakistan, and today there's been a very sharp decline in all these various religious groups. And that has been, we have seen newspaper items of great deal of genocidal action in Pakistan against these people. Same thing in Bangladesh. There are daily occurrences against the Hindus there. And Afghanistan, one need hardly say what the Taliban has been doing. So this act is most appropriate, and the Home Minister deserves congratulations for bringing it after years and years of recognition of this problem. Now, in 1947, November 25th, the Congress Working Committee met and passed a resolution urging citizenship for the refugees of Pakistan, and said, to quote, the Congress is bound to afford full protection for all those non-Muslims from Pakistan who have crossed the border and come over to India or may do so to save their life and honor. Now, they are saying that you can't do this, but their own party, as far back, they said it. They said you can't do it. This is Article 14. I'll come to Article 14 also. The amount of illiteracy in Congress is unbelievable. In Rajya Sabha, Manmohan Singh, it was read out what he said. And I just remind you, he said, minorities in countries like Bangladesh have faced persecution. It's our moral obligation that if the circumstances force people, these unfortunate people, to seek refuge in our country, our approach to granting citizenship to these unfortunate persons should be more liberal. This is Mr. Dr. Manmohan Singh, he was here in the morning. Then when somebody read this out, after that he has gone, he's not come back. I hope they didn't send him away. Then the Chief Minister of Assam, Tarun Gogoi, had submitted a memorandum to the then Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh, on April 20th, 2012, pleading that the religious minorities had to flee due to discrimination, religious persecution at the time of partition, and they should not be treated as foreigners and given citizenship. And later on, in the Guwahati High Court, he filed an affidavit and said that this is something our government would like to do. We have approached the central government. So, in all that we can say is that the BJP government has acted instead of giving speeches and passing resolutions, which is what has been done by the opposition, particularly the Congress party. And it is here that one last question I would deal with, and then I will conclude what I have to say. Article 14 does not bar this particular amendment, because it has been in a number of judgments. You can't just read blindly the Article 14, what it says. Article 14 has been undergone many, scrutiny in many court cases. One of the best presentation of Article 14 and what it means is the Antule case, where the government had created a special court, and this was challenged in the Supreme Court, that how can you have a special court for an individual? This is Article 14 violation. And then the 9-judge bench gave a judgment, which is a classic judgment in 1988, where they said that when it comes to Article 14, only equal groups can be, only people who are equal in terms of their entitlement, only there you can invoke Article 14. Today, for instance, on SPG, we have for Prime Minister a separate security force. That's permitted because Prime Minister is in a separate category. But for the rest of the members of Parliament and others, we have gone on the basis of not only the gradations on the basis of security risk. So Article 14 says you can make this distinction. And we have made this distinction because in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, in Afghanistan, these groups who have been identified have been singled out for ill treatment and oppression. And as far as the Ahmadiyas are concerned, or the Sunni Shias are concerned, they would prefer any day going to Iran, where it's a Shia country, or to Bahrain, where Ahmadiyas are accepted as Muslims. Both of them declare themselves as Muslims. They don't say that we are in a distinct religious group. It is the Wahhabi group in Pakistan which says you are not Muslims. But the world in general accepts them as Muslims. So they cannot come into this category because these countries are Darul Islam. They are religious constitution where Islam has been accepted as the state religion. And therefore, to bring that in is rubbish. In fact, many single Muslims have come to our country to seek refuge. Tariq Fateh is one of the examples, Taslima from Bangladesh. Then what happened? They said, this is only our intermediate point. Taslima went and got citizenship from Sweden, and Tariq Fateh got it from Canada. And therefore, in our country, I don't think a Pakistani Muslim wants to leave and come to our country. And therefore, there's no need for include them also in this bogus concept of Article 14 being equality for all. So finally, I'll say that Sri Lanka Tamils, they did not come to our country because of religious persecution. There was a war there, and because the area of Tamil Nadu, of Sri Lanka, the Tamil areas of Sri Lanka, there was a full-fledged war, and they came on that. After that, after our government came, they have all been regularly going back. The government of India has built houses for them, and now it has dwindled from 1 crore to something like 15,000. And in another 6 months, there will be no, and all this business of genocide and all, these are all LTT propaganda. Our parliament cannot be used for LTT propaganda. And therefore, I would say that this bill is
going on record.
Something we need to protect ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. The message from Lok Sabha Secretary General. Please take your seat, Mr. Vaiko. Please. The message from Lok Sabha Secretary General.
Sir, with your kind permission, I rise to report that the Lok Sabha at its sitting held on the 11th of December 2019 adopted a motion referring the Personal Data Protection Bill 2019 to a joint committee of the House consisting of 20 members from the Lok Sabha and 10 members from the Rajya Sabha, and recommending to the Rajya Sabha that the Rajya Sabha do concur in the said motion and join the said joint committee and communicate the names of the 10 members to be appointed by the Rajya Sabha to the joint committee, with instructions for the joint committee to report to the Lok Sabha by the first day of the last week of the budget session 2020.